Speaking of Mario Kart, for some reason Monte Cristo wants to speed into the race as well. I miss Monty and Doa. So my thumb. Welcome to Teh Daily Neko. News you can meowsly trust. Straight from Kitten's paw. For today we return to Dexerto. Written May 26, 2020 by Michael Gwilliam. Monte Cristo reveals OWL rejected his complicated Mario Kart Cup format. I miss Overwatch. I liked it a lot. A certain part of Overwatch. Several parts of the game. And the characters. Ooh. Former Overwatch League commentator Christopher Monte Cristo Michaels revealed on his Cloud9 podcast Essential Esports that the OWL rejected a Mario Kart Cup season format he originally pitched. During his show with Houston Outlaws coach Harsha Bandy, Valiant coach Mike Packington Sklenny, and former pro-turn content creator Connor Avast Prince, the group discussed the pros and, mostly, cons of a traditional season format. The Overwatch League, for most of its third season, has run a standard season schedule just as major North American sports leagues do, something that has been widely controversial from esports purists, who find the format to be antiquated and boring.
The way I couched it was that it was sort of, it was more along the lines of, I guess, like tennis, where you have like, you know, the US Open and the Australia. You have the big like tentpole tennis events where everybody kind of travels there and competes. You could also compare it to like a Mario Kart race, okay, where you have like the Star Cup or whatever. So my idea was that when we go into the home and away model, is that we carve everything up into like a North American Cup, and then you have the Asian Cup, and you have the European Cup, or West Coast NA, East Coast NA and Europe/Asia. And what you do is you theme this cup. So we would call it like, you would have 4 cups a year, like the Omnic Cup and the Talon Cup, okay, whatever you want to call it. Theme it around Overwatch lore. Fine, cool. You have the Omnic Cup, and the Omnic Cup is being played simultaneously. So you have the West Coast Omnic Cup, East Coast Omnic Cup, and you have the Asian Omnic Cup, okay? And the teams that are in there all compete for that first stage, and like the first stage is always called the Omnic Cup. So you can actually say like, oh, this team is like a 3-time Omnic Cup winner, right? Whatever you want to say. You can drive narratives that way is my point. It's primarily a narrative driving device for the broadcast. Now you have a winner from each of these regions, and then maybe you have an international tournament that happens with the top teams from each of the cups after you resolve that. But the key thing is with travel. So you might say half the West Coast teams are going to go to Asia, and half the Asian teams are going to go to the West Coast. So some teams are at home for the entire month, and the other teams are traveling among the different homestands or whatever, right? And the reason why this was not accepted was because it was too complicated. And the idea was, if you won a cup, you'd get circuit points that would, playoff points, let's say, that would lead to playoff seeding. And the playoff points would increase in amount as you got closer to playoffs, so it would weight the back end of the season because patches exist, and like, you don't want a team that was good on a patch in 6 months before playoffs start. It's what League does. It's very effective. Yeah. It's what League does. It's very effective. League doesn't do that anymore, but it's what they did at the time. So the idea here is that you have multiple champions all at one time. So half the teams will travel to a different region. You play your little tournament there. Each of them raises a trophy, and then maybe you have a weekend where it's like, you know, the ultimate Omnic Cup winner, and then you just move all the teams again and you do this. It limits travel. Are you guys following? I know it's complicated.
Yeah. No, I get your system that you're going for.
Environment. And the reason why it was too complicated was the presumption was that playoff points and all these individual micro tournaments, I was told, would be too complicated for fans. Again, even though we literally have 20 years of esports history that shows that people can understand this.
Also, so it's really not that
and they're
hard
like, people,
to get, right?
People, I mean, I agree with you. This is, you know, we are people who understand these things. But I was told that no, it's the regular season that's much easier to understand, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, which it is, but I also think that it doesn't matter. You can still do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to me too because, like, for me personally, like, it's the interesting part is that we have a league.
While the OWL has recently changed course with the newly added monthly tournaments, similar to stages that ran in seasons 1 and 2, they're still quite different than what the Flashpoint product advisor had in mind. Notably, the points earned near the end of the season would be worth more going into the playoffs because of how the meta changes going into that final stretch. Additionally, not every team would be locked into their own region with teams playing 2 in their own and 2 away. While this idea may sound cool, it was ultimately rejected was because it was too complicated. It's too bad that we never got to see Monte Cristo's Cup format in action, but hopefully, as the OWL continues, there's a chance that this eventually gets the go-ahead. I've never paid attention to Overwatch, and I don't know what the format is like, but I do love the idea of actually having matches and teams set to some geographical regions. One of my favorite eras of competitive gaming was the Smash Bros. Melee days of East Coast and West Coast rivalry, and I wish we had some modern equivalent. But with online multiplayer being the norm these days, having geographic loyalty, or geographic pride, or geographic narratives don't really make sense. In the days of Melee, infrastructure for online multiplayer wasn't around for that game, so the community came together for the joy and love of the game and the competition. They did so in the East Coast and West Coast, independently, and eventually they clashed and had their region battles. And then came the Japanese to American tournaments. And then the Swedes. And then we had Leffen and Armada. XD. It is a story and competitive scene born of the fan base, organically, and was vastly different from other competitive games of the time like Halo and Call of Duty. While I'm glad that competitive gaming has grown to what it is today, I still wish there were these intimate, long-lasting rivalries that I could witness and care about these days. But I'm still waiting for a new esport title that I find interesting, both as a game and as a competition. Maybe I'll find a game someday. And maybe one day we'll have more cool stories and players and teams and rivalries and such. Too bad most of these days the big esport organizations just swallow up all the players in every game and few are willing to go their own way. What we really need is more 1v1 games. So, when is Nintendo going to make a competitive Mario Kart game? Do it, Gabe Bowser. So if anyone watching is a game developer, please make a good game that isn't made by Riot or Blizzard, and that has no investment from Tencent. Do it or you're gay. And speaking of gay, let's remember to live, laugh, love. With this pretty eerie picture by Chor Fuji. Damn, I wish I had a GF. I'd hang out with her like this. And we'd play games together like in Animal Crossing. And she'd come visit my island. And by my island, I mean my bed. If you know what I mean. Ooh. Don't forget you can help me buy gay Pokemon girl posters and figurines, as well as posters and figurines for Overwatch princesses. You. Thanks for watching. Remain vigilant and don't get trolled out there. Suck my dick, faggots. JK lol. Fucking got him.